day I said to Bob that I can't always get that knob. I can't do that.
And we just sort of put that down to a lapse, as you do. And then sometime later it was the windscreen wipers. And you think, well, that's fairly basic, but it was at that stage that we decided we probably should go and start the process toward. We didn't know what the process was going to be, but we decided we should go to the doctor and put ourselves in his hands. Well, the diagnosis came later, yes, when it was formally confirmed, basically. Yes. But once we started being concerned about lack of confidence in the various controls of the car, I just said, well, we really got to seriously think about stopping.
Maybe his judgment wasn't quite as sharp as it had been, but the one thing I did notice on our trips to the golf course was he was driving slower. Where it was 100 kilometre speed limit, he was travelling mostly at about 85. So that was the only difference I'd noticed.
We was going to my sister, which we go practically daily, that distance and that away, and he says, "Oh, if you ask me where I should turn to, Maria, I don't know."
Well, the first hint of it was in an appointment with a geriatrician, and once he had reports back from the neurologist saying there was suspicion of semantic dementia, he said that it was his invariable practice to make notification to Vic Roads, the licensing authority. And so he made a report to Vic Roads, and then Vic Roads invariably follows up requiring a licence test assessment.
I think the first things I noticed were that he was driving quite erratically. He would drive quite fast when perhaps he shouldn't be driving fast. He used to sometimes get to a roundabout. He doesn't have an Alzheimer's, so memory loss was not a particular issue for him. However, there was a little of that. He'd get to one of our regular roundabouts on our trip to our country place, and he would go around the roundabout and he wouldn't realise he should come off the roundabout on a particular angle, and he'd keep going, and then he'd realise he'd missed it and he'd keep going around, and I'd say, "Oh, we missed that," and he said, "No, I didn't." And so he used to be very defensive about things, and I realised that he wasn't as sharp at recognising things. When he should have been driving steadily on a freeway, he would be driving steadily but getting slower and slower and slower. But he didn't realise he was getting slower. So I would say something and he'd suddenly speed up, and I thought this was really weird, and it was certainly out of character with the precise sort of driving that he had been known for. He felt confident in what he was doing, but we could see he wasn't doing his driving well.
He just said basically it's all getting too hard and I'm not confident anymore. Yes, it was entirely your decision, wasn't it?
Yes.
You might have got a bit of encouragement later on if it wasn't, but you were very good at that time, yeah.
Fortunately, Bob is very easygoing and didn't resist the fact that I was taking over the driving that had always been his domain.
When I noticed the first time he says, "I don't know where to turn," so I wouldn't allow him anymore to drive.
Mum straight away shared that there was a problem.
Yeah.
She shared with me, my sister, my brother, the grandkids who are sort of getting onto their teenage years and things like that. So it was never like hidden from anyone. It was shared openly, and then we had to discuss how to solve it.
At that stage, Carol's driving was still quite normal, and it was in that first, licence test, she passed. So her licence was renewed without condition for a year, but it's subject to annual reassessment. So the second time is when her licence was lost. Carol took the news that she was. Even the news that she had to go for a test, she took very hard, but the news that she'd actually lost her licence was devastating. She felt that she was the victim of injustice because she hadn't crashed the car, she hadn't even scratched the car, she hadn't hurt anybody, she hadn't been the subject of any convictions or even demerit points, nothing. Nobody had stopped her and said, there was anything wrong with her driving. So she took all that very hard and continues to this day, continues to take the loss very hard.
I'd picked up some things, some help sheets and so on, and some information from Alzheimer's Victoria, and I actually found that it would be a good idea to speak to him about it. I thought it would be a good idea anyway, but it gave me a few pointers. I'd Googled a bit of information as well of how other people dealt with it, but it was clear to me that Jeff wasn't going to take any notice of me. So before one of our visits, I organised a conversation with our specialist.
I'd sort of said, well, nothing will change. Whenever we go anywhere together, I'll do the driving. And about the only place we didn't go together was when he played golf. And I said, that's no problem, I'll just drop you off at the golf course and come and pick you up later. But he just went very quiet about it. And a couple of days later, when it was golf day, I said, you know, I'll drive you down, and he just said no. He'd rather not go. And I just said, well, you know why you shouldn't drive, but the decision's yours.
And I don't remember that I said, no, you can't drive anymore. I just said, of course you can drive.
No, we never said, no, you just stop driving, don't ever get a key, you're not to get into the car. We never had that confrontation.
After this, he said he can't, he doesn't remember. Then from that time, I start to take over my driving. And he said, I can drive. I said, of course you can, but I'll take you because I go this way and goes like that. Then the rest of the family as well would do that, my children, grandchildren. And so anytime he want to go somewhere, or buy something, then he says, somebody's hopping and say, oh, I'm going this way, I'll take you, I'll bring you home, just like helping you.
I guess the first conversations I had were after we were told that we would have to go for a reassessment. I downloaded the tests from the Vic Roads website. We ran through a number of tests. I would take her on simulated driving assessment tests myself and give her instructions like an instructor would. And so we did everything possible to practice and prepare her for the tests. But all of that time, her response was, I shouldn't have to be doing this. I'm fine. I haven't hurt anybody. I'm fine to drive. So she was in denial of any loss of driving ability and felt unreasonably threatened by the imposition of having to go for her test.
It was an incident in New South Wales where an elderly gentleman had knocked into a pram or pusher of a young child and badly injured this child, a similar age to one of our grandchildren. And I actually we discussed that. I sat on the couch, I picked a good time when he wasn't angry and aggressive or irritated, when he was listening, and I said, isn't that a terrible thing, well, that's really why we have to think about driving, because in that case it was too late. And he just went very silent. He thought about it. Then I organised with our specialist to actually tell him that he would not need to either decide to stop driving or he'd be ordered to, and that was a message that I had already given Jeff, and he was very annoyed about. But he listened to the specialist. He didn't agree with him, but he listened, and I think he took it in, but he didn't think he had to do anything about it, because he actually really honestly didn't believe there was anything at all wrong with his driving. Anyway, he reached a point where he said, well, I'm not going to drive anymore.
Well, I think we can manage, we are managing very, very well, because our grandchildren have got cars now. What are you doing now then? Where are you going? And I'll take you and da-da-da-da-da.
I mean, they are there if we need them in an emergency, but otherwise I guess we're coping, yes.
Once Bob stopped driving, he had great support from the golf club where he'd been a member for 20 years. A friend used to come and pick him up twice a week, play golf with him as his partner each time, and then come home. And another group of friends used to take him out to their club once a week and play with him too. It was great to have such support, and people that shared his passion for golf too made it special for him. He was able to continue doing what he wanted to do and be part of the golf community still.
I suppose we're very lucky that we're a very close family,
Yes.
and we've always supported each other in lots of ways.
The support that we got was from family, in particular Carol's children, who realised that her driving was becoming a little suspect, and that it was appropriate that she undergo the tests, and if she failed the test, that she lost her licence.
I had a word to a few friends as well, just in case they ever needed to reinforce it, a couple of very good friends, and my thinking there was that he might say something to them about me being something negative about me being at him to give up driving, and I thought, well, if they are aware that that's an issue, they can reinforce things and say, well, you know, you will have to think about that at some stage, Jeff, yes.
We pretty much had decided that driving was out, you know, for her own benefit.
Yes.
It really wasn't going to be wise to drive anymore, and she was very sensible and just said, well, you know, I'm not confident.
I first asked the specialist whether he should be driving, and it was just the specialist just said to me, oh no, he shouldn't be driving now, but didn't offer anything more, and I was unaware that we should be notifying anybody about his condition or anything.
The role of reporting Carol to Vic Roads was undertaken by the geriatrician alone. He had the support of the neurologist report, which said that the suspected diagnosis was semantic dementia.
We came to a family decision to not let him drive. We didn't go to a doctor to tell us to stop him from driving. We could see ourselves that needed to stop. We didn't take his licence away. We didn't even cancel his licence. We just didn't use it anymore.
But our specialist was very good. He actually said, well, Jeff, if you don't make up your own mind about this, we'll need to organise a driving assessment.
I think you've just got to be serious, you've got to be sensible, and accept that the unacceptable, which is that it's very, very difficult with that diagnosis to drive, or even before you got the formal diagnosis. Once you start losing your confidence in the car, then you shouldn't be there.
Once you'd stopped driving, we hung on to your car, and for probably maybe 4 or 5 months, and then one day you decided we'd go for a drive out into the country, and came back and said you were ready to sell it. So then we sold the car.
I would strongly suggest that you don't hide the fact from your family that they can't drive, or, you know, granddad's not coping anymore, or you want to pretend he's still some macho, perfect granddad. Just you've got to be honest with your family, and mostly they're willing to step up and help as well.
Stop before you crash rather than stop after you crash. The second advice, I think, is to do everything possible to support the person who has to stop driving. I think an unofficial certificate issued by a husband or friend and signed that says that they've been a safe driver and thanks them and recognises their driving history and record. It did make a big difference in her, I guess, level of pain about having to stop driving.
Everyone's dementia is really very different. Each person and each family experiences the dementia differently. The dementia itself is different in different cases, Alzheimer's, frontal temporal, Lewy body, vascular, whatever. But so too is every person's experience of it. And look, I guess there are some lasting things to remember, and that is that a person with that has developed dementia, unfortunately, loses a lot of their insight. some more than others, but loses their insight and accuracy about the way things really are. They lose their ability to judge situations in varying degrees again. Some people lose it completely, others just lose it partially. Make sure you pick your time, pick the time that you raise the subject. Try and pick a time when things are calm, things are going quite well, and just perhaps say, look, I've just been thinking about this. You know, just broach it gently. We may need to think about driving and how we're going to deal with it. So you raise it gently, and I think the other thing is realising for that person living with dementia that there's a huge loss involved, a sense of loss of independence, sense of loss of capability, things that often come up saying, well, I'm not stupid, you know, and they're not stupid. It's the disease, not them. And it takes a lot for the person living with dementia to come to grips with that.
For more information, visit our website at fightdementia.org.au or call the National Dementia Helpline on 1800 100 500.